Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's call. So we are ready to kickstart KMI 24 Tertial 1. And over the next 1 hour, we'll be giving you all the necessary details for this tertial, what are the updates, and how are we progressing in terms of the timelines, and so on. So here's an overview for what we know so far for the drivers in home and garden in 2023. Our survey data shows quite a lot of movements in shopping preferences and motivations this year. But before I get to that, I'll just touch on some of the macroeconomic indicators. So this chart looks at total GDP growth rates with inflation ripped out, averaging globally to 7% of inflation in 2023. This is what GDP growth looks like this year if you allow for that price movement. Overall, it is plus 3% growth in the global economy, but you can see that this is all about those price rises, while underlying demand is down over 4 points. Two factors of relevance to home and garden are at work here. Interest rates have been used to fight inflation, and this has impacted housing markets, with a direct impact, especially in home improvement due to house move numbers. We're also seeing the impact of a 5 to 10% reduction in spending power since 2021 because wages have not kept up with inflation, and that's pushed globally more spend away from discretionary choices and more towards necessities, with energy and food as consistent parts of this. We consistently see home and garden growth underperforming the wider economy. One future factor for 2024 being warned of it is that 2023 is inflated by a rise in credit and debt, and that won't be sustainable, particularly in a higher interest rate environment. Keep that in mind for the forecast when you see how much of a role credit and delayed payment is playing in efforts to hold our demand this year. European confidence was in an upward trend, but it peaked when inflation proved harder to get beyond that than expected, and when interest rates had to keep going up. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is an ongoing source of disruption to energy and supply lines, so that's also pushing confidence down as we head into an expected harsh winter. In home and garden, we came into 2023 7 points up in current terms over 2019. The retail sales index data shows a flat market in the first half, as mentioned in the GDP data. Spending inside the home is 4 points behind the total retail pattern. If we remove inflation, Western Europe looks 7 points down in underlying demand. Confidence in the US shows a very similar pattern to Europe, better in 2020, worse in 2021, and generally with smaller swings in sentiment with a more tenuous link to the instability over Ukraine. In home and garden, we came into 2023 15 points up in current terms over 2019, lacking the demand reset we saw in Europe in 2022. The retail sales index data for the first half this year came in 2 points ahead, which is 5 points behind total retail. The US indexes are quite broad and tend to include products like secondhand. So when we compare what we already learned so far from the latest KMI cycle in Tertial 3, they are showing a more negative 8% pattern focusing on the homewares and furnishing sectors. Confidence in China has been moving far more vigorously than we see in Europe or the US, with COVID especially creating a different experience. In 2023, we're seeing a particularly strong housing market problem with knock on impacts into demand in quarter 2 and quarter 3. In home and garden, we came into 2023 4 points up in current terms over 2019. The retail sales index data reflects the confidence fall quite closely in quarter 2, and we see a strong drop off in April. The link to the housing crisis is visible in the gap versus total retail. The furniture index looks quite closely aligned to GDP. It looks to be the home improvement side that is pulling things down. This all aligns closely to what we saw in the latest KMI Tertial 3. If we think about shopper psychology and what we can see shifting from all the tools we have, there are some movements worth flagging here. So first up, there's a great effort going on around value for money. That this is about the cost of living crisis, but this is turning into something far more involved than just straight chasing of low prices. We've always disliked things breaking too early or too easily, but our tolerance for early failure and disposable consumption has collapsed. If we know when we trade down on low prices, we are also guaranteeing low quality. There are globally nearly 10% fewer shoppers who are going to accept that. And this isn't a generations or age related shift. We see a more abrupt fall in 2023 for younger generations, but all groups, regions, and cultures are containing the social shift. When we've probed on this, a shared COVID memory is recurring. Many people still vividly remember clearing out the clutter after that first lockdown. We were all forced to face perhaps a decade's worth of packaging, dead products, and unused products when our living spaces proved tiny, impossible to navigate happily, and thus intolerable. The consumption guilt that accompanied that disposal moment was visceral, and it left a mark on us. Combine that with the cost of living crisis making frivolous or unthinking waste even more taboo, and this is how it manifests. At the same time, European consumers in particular are reducing risk by reducing the investment level in product replacement by trading down. This is helping private label in particular, and we're seeing a surge in premium private label going head to head with the brand pricing as one of the reactions. This matches with the other indicators we see. Our Voice of Industry survey indicated up to 20% of home and garden retailers were investing in new and expanded private label in 2023. We also track reactions to the cost of living crisis and using our AI research tool that looks across company documents in the sector, showing the scale of the conversation around any particular topic, in this case, tracking cost of living and private label over time. Low cost and low price topics don't match this profile, they're more subdued. Private label is the clearest linked reaction I can see in the data. You can expect more private label. Keep an eye out for any premium private label, as that is a recurring topic in the last 3 months. And that's particularly interesting, but you should watch for more sophisticated reactions to seeking value. How are brands trying to hold premium prices? What are they doing with added value to avoid discounting? And how is everyone trying to simulate demand in considered purchases like kitchen renovations and premium mattresses? Credit, such as delayed payment programs, are one of the obvious ones we can see expanding. But if you see anything novel, we will want to know about it in the reports. Beyond this drop in our tolerance for obsolescence, our rising waste guilt, our ethics shift too, particularly linked to sustainability. Secondhand matters far more than it did pre pandemic, and it matters in some markets most especially. We don't need to size it. Secondhand is out of scope for us, but we do need to watch it for trends. Like one warning we got from our clients last year was that some declines we reported were really a move to secondhand rather than a new stock. We need a sense on this, so please ask about secondhand trends whenever you get a chance through your trade interviews. One thing we can care about is the secondhand appearing in mainstream prime stock home and garden stores, big players starting secondhand on the side, or any use of trade in of old when buying new. The energy efficiency obsession continues. Scarcity of gas is not an issue this winter, but cost is still a problem. You can expect innovation and claims on the topic to carry on being important into 2024, affecting more than just Europe. LED lighting is the most obvious one, and not new, but it started getting into paint of all things. So we can keep an eye out on all such products, particularly linked to DIY. Some brands are reacting strongly to that shift. The thinking is that sustainability and durability are now one and the same thing. We see this as the most consistent and visible trend across homewares innovation in particular, but it's visible as an innovation driver across home and garden. Any material stories like Tritan, plastic, spreading, or treatment stories like glassware, getting iron toughening or coating like ceramic finishes that get linked to stronger durability and a longer service life. And anything that helps products last longer in a dishwasher are especially potent right now. The priorities for what we want to do with our time are also changing quite radically. This is not so much about time saving as it is about what we need to get from any time we invest in something. One of the more extreme shifts in our consumer survey data was this 5 point movement of time priorities in pre versus post pandemic. This is a lot more than 10 years of normal change that happened in a rush. This is a move towards the self, towards me time, and away from partners, from children, family, and in reality, from anything other than the self. So this isn't a bad thing at all. We endure a systematic loss of complacency, and we no longer take our own health for granted to the same degree, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or otherwise. Self care isn't about selfishness, self love, or vanity, or anything negative. It's about healing. Many of us are starting to wake up to a realization that our sense of well being isn't coming back unless we do act and find it again for ourselves. Self care at home is a good thing. People are starting to play a longer game, a more mature game when they are owning their own health. So, this is the full framework we built for the wellness topic. This is everything, all industries we look at, where we can see wellness needs states influencing product development. Each of these has propositions behind them. So, there's a report on Passport that goes into detail called Self Care at Home, wherein, sorry, we look at how product development conversations go about. Lots of people know wellness is rising, but few have an idea of how big it already got. So there are consistent ways that this wellness trend is manifesting in range hierarchies, and this is not limited to home and garden. This looks fairly standard across most industries. The part clients are caring about the most is this premium experiential space, which is growing and emerging now. We're particularly keen on anything that speaks about improving wellness or self care, improving mood, or boosting positive emotions. Clients are also asking how long this flexible living spaces, need for better storage as part of furniture design, and general clutter reduction is going to last as a driver. It was definitely still a strong shopping factor through 2023. We've heard that a few times recently on multiple continents, but some of the retailers wonder if this is now permanent or if this is noticeably losing momentum. Beyond consumer shopping drivers and changes in psychology, there's one thing I want to share about retail and brand strategy. Companies got a taste of revenue and growth that was possible when the sector was adding about 10% more active consumers during the boom. The product development and new concept reactions have taken about 18 months or more to bring to market, so we saw quite a lot arrive in 2023 industry events, and more are promised. This change in packaging, staff store training, store layouts, and space for workshops in store and services being offered. In some cases, this is going a step further, and Leroy Merlin, for example, in France, is now linked to Moncoche Brico, and so this retailer is offering services for teaching DIY skills in the home, as well as skill monitoring services in their stores. So there's a lot happening with a lot of investment on display. Moving on to the next segment of this presentation here. So starting with an introduction to KMI 2041 and the timeline. So as we kickstart KMI 2041 this week, so essentially what we aim to do this week is you can get in touch with your project managers, with your commissioners, and share your prospective list of trade interviews that you plan on conducting in the coming weeks. And we shall be reaching out to you with all the necessary documents by the coming Monday. So again, this tertial will be a research period of 2 weeks. And thereon, we will have tertial 2 and tertial 3 of 2 weeks each again, where in tertial 2, we'll be delivering the data to IKEA in June in 2024, as well, and the tertial 3 will be delivered to IKEA in October 2024. Moving on to the product category definitional changes that have taken place since the last tertial, since the last edition. So built-in bathroom furniture is being moved from other indoor furniture to bathroom and sanitary ware. While this is not something that needs to be taken care of by you, this will be done by the central team before the research begins. So these changes will already be incorporated within the master calc before having it sent to you. And some interesting things coming in with the category expansion in KMI 24. So expanded the scope to include two new categories, care and repair and fragrances. And we've also incorporated two categories into the core research, being home appliances and smart home. So essentially, the central team will be providing the pre-estimates for these categories. But what we need to do is validate the size and the growth for each of these. The historic changes will be allowed for the new categories and countries. And if I move on to the next slide, we'll see the list of new countries that are being incorporated with smart homes. So smart homes will also cover these markets now. I'll take a pause and check if Tanya, you would like to add anything right now.
But if you move the previous slide, yeah, just to add in here, home appliances, as we all know, it's not a new category, but it was integrated in core research. It's just smart home is now being integrated in the core research, and we are now, as Harshita mentioned, we now will also be researching the category for the other markets, as mentioned in the next slide. Uh, and previously, those who worked on smart home with us, there was an elaborate list of categories, but now those categories have been combined in just two or three subcategories in the current core list. So, for those we already have pre-estimates, we will obviously integrate those pre-estimates from previous research. For the new ones, we will have pre-estimates, but obviously this needs to be validated this time for smart home. But again, it's not an elaborate list of 30 odd categories that we used to research. It's just one or two smart home categories now that we are researching. And care and repair and fragrances, for these two categories, again, we will have pre-estimates for these based on model, but these should be validated, and the estimate should be taken with a pinch of salt. Care and repair basically covers hand tools, smaller hand tools, which or nails, those sort of small small drills, screwdrivers, and things like that, which are generally, if you've purchased an IKEA product, it is generally they come with it so that you can use it to put it together your products. So it's not a it's not something that IKEA is focused on, but they still sell these small products. That's why they want to include it in the range. Fragrances will include air care categories, that like candle air fresheners and uh, sort of air fresheners categories will provide a detailed listing of one more point. These are not currently in the calc that we'll be sending you. Uh, we will provide a separate file, and the PMs will communicate with you. But we have added these questions around these in the discussion guide that we'll be sharing with you, so that you can proactively ask questions around the market sizes and the growth rates of these 4 5 rows that we'll be adding in the calc. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Moving on to the scope and methodology. So, something that all the everyone who has worked on this earlier knows that we look at a top-down approach when collecting sources. So, since the project has a high grade of granularity, we go about a top-down approach when conducting the research. We focus on the top-level categories and distribute the information at the lower levels subsequently. So this slide essentially lists down some of the country report guidelines. So as we know, after we finalize the data, we go about writing the summary reports for both the country as well as the categories. And these are some of the country report guidelines that are listed here, wherein we talk about the macroeconomic trends in inflation and the cost of living, retail channel movements and buying preferences, and from the technology, sustainability strategy innovations, as well as wellness strategy innovations. So these are some of the broad factors that we look into. And Here is an example of a country summary that was written in the previous tertial. So this is exactly how we would like a country summary to be, and whoever's worked on it has seen how a country summary is. So this is an example of the same, wherein we give a detail. First, we start with what the data projects. How is it changed over the previous year? What's the change like? How is it split across the tertials? And then we give all the macroeconomic factors. What are the other any recent developments, trends, or changes that have taken place which are affecting the market currently and which are expected to affect the market. So these are all the things that are incorporated. We can, when we roll out the documents, we'll share this with you so you have an example of the same and how is the country summary written. And at this moment,
One point which I can mention here, Harshita, is about the table that you mentioned. So T1, T2, T3, and overall growth. Obviously, we take into account the overall growth. That is what we focus on through our tertiary research. But now, as we are moving on and trying to know client expectations, they are also looking to get more granular when it comes to tertials. So tertial growth rates is also very important. And when we end T3, it becomes very important for us to make sense of tertial growth rate when we compare it with retail sales index, at least directionally. So if in Norway T1 was -6, T2 was might have improved, that's why -4, and then T3 was much better. That's a trend that we had shown, and we also saw in the retail sales index, and we expect it to be done this way, because client is now just not focused on the overall, they are focused on tertial growth as well. At this point of time, we know that doing it for the forecast, we don't have retail sales index. I mean, we will have for 2 months, last 2 months, but at this point of time, it will be difficult. But uh, whatever forecast you're providing for T2 and T3, especially for T1 and T2, I would say um, it is essential for us to back it up with reasonings. Overall, obviously, is the most important. We start our country summary with that, but then we move more granular to T1 and T2 and why it looks more negative or negative than what we provided previously, and why it's expected to be the way it is. What factors are leading that? That needs to be written and provided to the client.
thank you, Tanya. So as we talk about the country summary, I will also show you the template that we have revised for the summaries. So this first sheet gives us all the instructions related to the country overview as well as the category summaries. So while you used to having one single cell for each of the category summaries, we have changed it to align with the client expectations to mention the category overview. Then we talk about the channel landscape and the key trends for each of the categories. So this is how the summaries template looks like now. And again, all the instructions are written here, detailed here, the category overview, what is it expected to include, so on about the channel landscape as well as the key trends.
And I would say let's the regarding the category summaries. Obviously, country summaries example we have, but for category summaries, also let's revamp the summaries now, because the previous summaries for 2022 and 2023 now also have somewhere written COVID and Russia Ukraine, which is no longer valid. Maybe the recent Israel Hamas war can be factored in, but I think we should remove those parts. Some of the key trends which are still valid, we can keep them, but I would prefer if we can ask around key trends which Harshita covered in the previous slides on country summaries. And in the starting, we will be sharing this deck with you. You can refer to this deck for ideas on how we can write more about key trends. And also, when it comes to category and channel landscape, it is essential for us to talk about numbers again. So, what is the trend that we have shown both at the category level and at the channel level, and why? Uh, for this category should be positive or negative. So all of that needs to be covered. So it can be strictly about numbers, and in the key trend section, you can provide your qualitative arguments.
Thank you, Tanya. Moving on to the tools and the deliverables. So, starting with all the documents that we'll be providing. So we'll be giving the research brief being this PPT itself. Then we have a master calc where all the data is incorporated. There's a discussion guide for the trade interviews. Then the country report guidelines will be shared with you. The retail sales index being a very powerful tool which we leverage during our research. Then the trade interviews contact tracker where you could reference and see previous trade interviews who have been contacted earlier, and a calling card which will be beneficial for your trade interviews and give you some context on the background of the market and how has it evolved so far and what is it likely to be over the forecast. Then we also have a definitions file which details all the product and channel definitions. Finally, the deliverables, which will be the master calc, wherein we have tabs for sizes, channels, and sources. Then the country and category summaries being the Excel file, which I previously shared right now, and the trade interview notes post you've conducted the trade interviews.
The product and channel definitions are now available in Excel format. So I hope that makes it easier for you to navigate and check the definitions.
Moving on to the retail sales index, so it has now been updated with the latest monthly data that has been published so far on the official websites. It's, as I mentioned, it's a very powerful tool for us and can be used as an input to reference and cross-check the overall growth and trimester splits for the historic as well as current years. And based on that, we can also improve our FY24 forecasts based on the same. So, as you know, this is the data is delivered to IKEA. So we do get some queries, and you might be aware of some pending queries. These shall be discussed with you as the research kickstarts, and the PMs will be reaching out to you to discuss the same. And as we've already discussed with the client, we will be looking into these in this tertial. So we'll need to um, do like research this during this tertial itself and can be incorporated in the trade interviews also. So we're looking at conducting 4 to 5 trade interviews wherein we are targeting the top line validation and again we as mentioned there's a calling card which will help you engage with the key industry players and these trade interview notes need to be shared with us as part of the final deliverable as well. And yes, you can reach out to IKEA if you have an established relationship with them. However, if you do not, you need not worry about that since we do have regular engagement sessions with them and we can use those to engage with them. Tanya, anything that you like to add here?
All good, Harshita, you can go ahead.
Perfect. So now that we're through this, we can hand over to the data team who shall be walking us through the master calc. Over to you, Saurabh.
Before that, does anyone have any question on this?
I do, please. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. Mariam here.
Hi, Mariam.
Hello. So just to confirm your explanation, Tanya, about the new categories. So for the new categories, smart homes and home appliances, as you said, was not a new category as such. But for smart homes
Mhm.
and others, you have data, you will share it with us. It will not be that we're building these categories from scratch,
No,
right? If you have some
we
estimates,
will
they
be
will be good.
modeling. Yeah, we will have model
Okay.
estimates. You can validate those estimates, but it's
Okay.
totally editable. It's not like you can't edit market sizes historic because we
Yeah.
understand the model can be.
Not
Yeah.
where we can't change the historic. Okay, excellent. And for the category summaries you were mentioning, so country summary is one slide, and category summary will be a slide per each category, or how would that go?